So to be clear, you're saying you're a better coach than Nick Saban. Those are your words. You just said that. That's your quote.
No, I would say this, and I think Nick. I would think Nick would agree. On that day, I was. Right?
That was Gerry DiNardo, and this is On the Bench with Mike Hall. That's me. Gerry, my best friend, has had a remarkable career in and around the world of college football. He's won a national title both as a player and as a coach. He put on the pads in the 1970s at Notre Dame as an all-American offensive lineman under legendary head man Ara Parseghian. Not long after playing ended for him, he began his coaching career. He worked his way up to being an assistant at Colorado in the 1980s, and he was the offensive coordinator when the Buffs won it all in 1990. Gerry then drew interest from the SEC as Vanderbilt made him their head coach, and in his first year there, he won the SEC Coach of the Year honor. After 4 years with the Commodores, LSU hired him as head coach, and he turned around that program too. The Tigers ended the season ranked in the top 15 in 1996 and 97. LSU moved on from him at the end of the 99 season, however, which opened the door to Gerry being one of the original head coaches in the first edition of the short-lived XFL. After that, he became the Indiana head coach for 3 seasons before putting down the clipboard and picking up a microphone. He started at ESPN for a couple years, then in 2007, becoming one of the signature studio analysts here at the Big Ten Network, sitting next to his now longtime fellow analyst, Howard Griffin. Oh, by the way, away from that, he's been a restaurateur for decades. I like Gerry because of the way he challenges things that don't feel right, his sense of humor, which is wonderfully silly, and because of his sneaky big heart. He is a burly, former athlete who does not love hugging. We are very different, but it is a genuine treat when I get to work with him. He always carries his weight. He catches when I'm making a joke and kindly fake laughs at most of them. And of course, I am guilty of what many people are, staying friends with him so that I can really be friends with his wife, Terry. She's the fun one. I started this conversation with Gerry DiNardo, by telling him I'd done some research and wondering if even he knew he was Italian.
I am. The interesting thing is I knew at a very young age. And so I became aware, and I've been working on that, Mike, probably my whole life. I think I'm more Italian now than I was when I was first born, because I recognized early in life. So I've had, several years, as you can tell, to develop it. But appreciate you mentioning that, certainly.
Sure. Well, another thing I dug up in research is you spell your name with a G, not a J like a normal person. Why is that?
Well, that's an interesting story. I don't know why, but I do remember when I was in grade school. First of all, I was Gerard at home. I was Gerry outside the house. I thought that would be a way to confuse people. When you got in trouble and someone said, "Do you know Gerry's parents?" they would say no. If I got in trouble and my name was Gerard, "Do you know where Gerard's parents lived?" they would know, because I lived in a neighborhood like everybody else. And so I was spelling it outside the home, Gerry, Jeroy, inside the home, Gerard, Gerard. And then, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, around there, I said, you know what? Everyone does the J. I'm going to do the G. I want mine to be a little different, because there's 2 capital letters in my last name. So now I had a G that was unusual, and I had an N that was capitalized in my last name. So I don't know why. I just remember when, and my mother, well, she got very angry with me.
Can I call you Gerard on air?
Yeah, absolutely not. No.
Okay, good. Glad we got this out there.
No problem, Michael.
That's all I had for you. Thanks, Gerry. We'll see you later.
Hey, this has been a real pleasure.
No. Sit down. You're not only Italian, you're also Irish. You played at Notre Dame.
I did.
Give me the difference in being recruited then versus being recruited now.
Wow. Well, let's assume that a lot of people know what recruiting is like now, okay? And then here's what it was like back then. First of all, I was at prep school, so I wasn't living at home. Coaches could come to your school or your home and take you out to dinner. That's against the rules right now. So I was at a prep school. So that was obviously something I look forward to because I was being wined and dined, not all that much. And so that was the contact I had with the coaches in my home, or in my case, in my school. Then I've got a letter inviting me to campus. And I called collect back to an office, whatever school was recruiting me, and said, yes, I'm coming. Then they sent me plane tickets. And then I got on a plane, I flew, and then I went back to school, and maybe I saw a coach one more time. Now, I wasn't a highly recruited prospect, but this wasn't drastically different from the highly recruited prospects. So basically, it was phone calls, it was mail. You know, obviously there wasn't any social media. I signed in April. The national letter, I believe, was like the third Wednesday in April. Then it was increasingly moved back, and then you and I do recruiting shows, so we know there's one in December. There used to be a conference letter in December. I didn't sign with a conference school, so I didn't sign a conference letter. So there was a conference letter in December, and then there was a national letter in April, and then the calendar has obviously since changed. But I'd say the basic difference, it was more like being a student than being like a present-day student athlete. In other words, if you have two young children, when they go to college or making that decision, it'll be a process that you'll be pretty active in. You know, you'll take your children to the campus. You'll do the research. You won't have a lot of contact with anybody from the school. It was more like that.
Yeah. So you said something in there. You're being a little humble there, right? I mean, Notre Dame wasn't taking schlubs in the 1970s. You were a decent recruit, right?
Well, they were taking some. Okay, so here's what, with me, it came down to three schools. It came down to Boston College, and they didn't offer me a scholarship. They were concerned about my height. I was short for an offensive lineman. North Carolina, Bill Dooley was at North Carolina, and they really did a great job recruiting me. I had friends from high school there, and I was at prep school, so I could have gone there mid-semester, which back then was very, very rare. Maybe less than 1% would do that because most of us were in high school. I was basically in the fifth year of my high school, so I already had a high school degree. So I almost thought about going to North Carolina at mid-semester, and then Notre Dame offered me. Now, Notre Dame was a little bit different for a couple of reasons. My brother was there. My older brother, he was very successful, so the coaches knew my family. You know, they didn't realize at that point that the genes had kind of been thinned out. So they knew me, and they knew the family, and they weren't under any restrictions, Mike, scholarship-wise, because they were an independent, and the governance at back then was really more conference. So as I remember, the Big Ten allowed, let's say, 30 scholarships a year. There wasn't a limit, or maybe it was 35. So for my freshman class, we had 35 freshmen. That's 140 guys on scholarship. So if they made a mistake on me, it really wasn't going to hurt their program. There was 34 other guys that were as good, if not better. But no, I wasn't a highly recruited guy. I was fortunate to have the offer from Notre Dame. I went to school. Again, I made 3 official visits: Boston College, North Carolina, Notre Dame. At that time, there was no limitation to official visits, Mike. I was with an incredible – we won the national championship because of my class. I was with an incredible class. Those guys were taking 10 visits, 12 visits. I mean, everybody on the freshman team went to Hawaii just to go to Hawaii. A lot of them went to Southern Cal just to go to Southern Cal in case they came to Notre Dame and they didn't make the travel squad. So I was not nearly as highly recruited as my teammates. You know, my roommate, Tom Clements, who was 4th in the Heisman, his decision was to play basketball for Dean Smith or quarterback for Ara Parsegian. How about that? I mean, wow. That was the quality of athletes that I was around back in the day.
Best part of winning a national championship in college?
This always has stuck with me. I can remember Ara Parsegian saying to us before the game, not right before the game, but sometime before the game, whether it was in South Bend or in New Orleans or whatever, where we were preparing. He said, this is an opportunity for us to say that we did something better than anybody else. How many times have you said, he's the best, she's the best car, best house, best neighbor, but you really don't know, right?
Right.
But this was proof that we could say for one calendar year, nobody did what we were doing better than us. And I don't know, I mean, I can't say anything else in my life that I have any evidence of that. And
not
so
broadcasting, not
certainly,
friendship. I mean,
certainly not broadcasting, certainly not coworkers. So I guess that, and there was a thrill. It was Eric Barsegian against Bear Bryant. It was New Year's Eve. It was the Sugar Bowl. I mean, there was a Catholics against the Protestants. I mean, it was a wild, wild event. And so there's many, many memories. And then the national championship ring, that's something I'll treasure, for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you still won't let me touch that, but one day maybe. What was Eric Barsegian like? I mean, he's a titan of the industry you ended up going into.
Ahead of his time. Retired at 52 years old, became a head coach at 26 years old. Vietnam War was just ending. And this is why there's a couple of reasons I say ahead of his time. He wasn't a grinder. He wasn't a screamer. He wasn't a yeller. He didn't demean. And back in the day, and this is when the Giants were coaching. This is Woody. This is John McKay. This is Bear Bryant. The Giants of college football. And yet he was intense, but he had a way about him. Vietnam War ending, so we weren't in the middle of the protests, and I think this is relevant to today, and I think this shaped a lot of my thoughts with coaching. If you want to protest the war, it's okay. No violence and no destruction. He didn't say, stay out of the Vietnam issue, don't have a voice. In fact, he actually encouraged it. He was Ari was very, very political, and He knew current events. He was drastically different. He worked for Woody Hayes. In fact, he was at Miami of Ohio with Woody was the head coach. And when Woody became the head coach of Ohio State, all the older assistants wanted to go to Ohio State instead of become the head coach of Miami of Ohio. So the way it happened is Ari's 26. He didn't really like Woody's style. Look forward to not being necessarily an assistant under Woody at Ohio State. And he said, if no one else wants a job, I'll take it. 26 years old, and he retires at 52.
You mentioned that he wasn't like a aggressive screaming guy. Why are so many coaches like that? I mean, listen, you can find it in basketball, you can find it in baseball, but it feels especially in football when you see someone like him being so great and not needing to be that way. Why are so many coaches the other way?
Well, I just think it's the way they think they can win, right? I mean, you can't stay in the business, evidence here, if you win, okay? So that's they think that's the answer. I mean, it's personality as well, but if you said to me I had to change my personality to win, any coach would do that. So I think deep down they think that's how to motivate people. They think that's how to teach. They not only think that's how to motivate and how to teach, they think that's the best way to motivate and teach. And I think some of it has to do with the mentors. So it's your personalities, it's your mentors, it's how's the best way to do this job. And, for Ara, it was this unbelievable amount of confidence. Here's what I say about Ara. You wanted to be around him. Back in the day, who wanted to be around the coach screaming and yelling at you?
Right.
Even our conditioning test, Mike, a 12-minute run, okay? See how far you could go. You have 2 arms and 2 legs, right? You pass the physical, okay? I can remember reporting. This is in the 70s. I mean, think of the coaches in the 70s. We reported South Bend, really hot and humid day. He cancels the conditioning test. It wasn't that important to him. That was unheard of. This is Bear Bryant going to A&M. What was that whole story? 25 guys only made it through camp. Give me the.
Right. No, I know what you're talking about.
So this is back in that day, and He says it's too hot to do the conditioning test. It's not all that important. We'll practice tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Boom. Crazy.
Yeah, he really was ahead of his time.
Yeah, he really was.
That's interesting. I want to get into your coaching career, but one more on your playing career. This is one of those things. I've known you for almost a decade and a half now. I've never heard the straight story, but every time you've told it, I've caught the tail end of it or it's been muffled. Rudy.
Okay.
You were there. What's the real story?
Okay, first of all, we were friends. We were pretty good friends. I mean, he was at Holy Cross, the junior college across the road. And so when he was on campus, he was usually in our room, me, Tom Clements, and our third roommate, John O'Donnell, who passed away several years ago. So he hung with us a lot before he was at Notre Dame. So here's what I say about the movie. I was there for the first half of that movie. He was only at Notre Dame 2 years, right? Because he went to junior college. And so I wasn't there for when he played in the game and all that. But the accuracy of the part I was there for was very accurate. And it was true. He was a pain in the butt at practice. I mean, I can remember doing an article at Newsday in Long Island. My daughter Kate, who you know, someone asked me about Rudy. It's kind of the same question as you're asking. And I said in the article, in my response, he was a real pain in the, but he was a very good friend. Well, they didn't print the part. He was a very good friend, and Kate loved Rudy, and Terry loves the movie and all that. And all of a sudden, I became a bad guy in my own home because I didn't mean to say it in that way. And I've run into him a couple times since. And when Kate was at Notre Dame, he was on campus and looked her up and said hello and all that. A lot of people don't like the movie. I think the people that were there for the second half of it don't think it was quite as accurate. For me, the first half was very, very accurate.
Right. You weren't there for any of the filming of the movie or anything, right?
No, I was not.
Was there any character that was based on you at all?
Loosely the guy in the parking lot. This goes back to practice, right? When, stop going so hard in practice. And
really?
Yeah, let's move on a little bit, Mike. He was a scout team player. I didn't want to be chasing Rudy around during the week when I was going to play against, some first-round draft pick against Southern Cal. Right. So I was trying to tell Rudy to cool it, just the opposite of what I was telling the scout team when I was coaching. I would tell them, do as I say, not as I do. Maybe, I don't know.
But so for real, that scene was kind of inspired by you?
You'd have to ask Rudy. There's a lot of conversation about it.
Well, I'm happy to tell you Rudy's joining us right now. Rudy! That's really cool. That's really, I didn't know that. So it was annoying, but in hindsight, it was the good annoying, the way he was.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, he wasn't on the field that much in practice. But when he was, it might be like a Thursday practice where it's like 3/4 speed. You're not in full gear, and this Rudy is just going full speed ahead. He's like this big. I mean, he was a total pain, but it was great. It was fabulous.
As our friendship attests, you like people who are pains. So you become an assistant coach. You start working your way up, and you get to Colorado, and you have great success there. Let me ask you a couple just yes/no questions. You're a good man, right?
Is there
just a yes/no?
Those are the only two answers.
Just yes/no. You're a good man.
I mean, what happens if I was somewhere in between? I can't say. All right, let's move on. Let's say yes.
Well, you're a decent man.
Okay, I don't.
You're an honorable man, a man of your word.
Oh, I know where this is going. Okay, so Mike, let me ask you this:
No.
How many people would have had a 5th down call? That's what you should be asking. Okay, who would be ready for the 5th down on the goal line? You see those sheets that the coaches carry on the sidelines? Okay, I ask you, you check any one of them, even the real big ones, the real plexiglass, laminated ones. Nobody's got a 5th down call.
Right.
I had one. Okay.
Okay, let's rewind. Let's rewind for 1 second. So for those who aren't caught up, when you were coaching at Colorado, you were offensive coordinator, and you played a game against the University of Missouri, and you were losing, and it was late in the game, final few seconds, you're driving downfield, you spike the ball on 1st down, you run the ball, call a timeout, you run the ball, the clock somehow stopped miraculously, you spike it on 4th down, and then you run it in for the touchdown. Except if you watch the video, you were clearly short on the 5th down, but that's not the point. The point is you had a 5th down call, Gerry.
Mike, there was no end zone cameras. Whether the ball crossed the plane, okay, on that last down, I mean, there is no proof that what you say is true. You are saying that ball didn't cross the plane on the
You're
last
deflecting.
down.
No, we're deflecting. What about the fifth down? You knew there were already 4 downs.
You know how many calls back in the day that could have been missed on the last play of the game? Okay, you're focusing on the wrong thing. What you should be saying, being in broadcasting, is that you wish the University of Missouri was a little bit ahead of their time and had cameras at the goal line to see on that last great call that the ball did cross the plane. You know, you with me? You're focusing on the wrong thing, Mike.
All right. 2 serious questions. One, in the moment, did you know, or were you like literally everybody else, just like, I think it's only 3rd down when we spike the ball? Or did part of you go, hang on a second?
No, I didn't know, Mike. You know, it really was a mess. And it's embarrassing to say I didn't know. I should have known.
Nobody knew.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. What went on the Missouri sidelines in a second. And so we got in the locker room, and everybody started talking about this. That's really the first time anyone on our side knew. I'm told by a friend of mine who had a friend on the Missouri staff. Bob Stoll was the head coach, and one of the Missouri coaches in the box, because we had no timeouts left, as you described, but Missouri did. And so someone in Missouri's box said, "Coach," or I don't think Bob wore headsets. I think he was talking to the one next to Bob, but I'm not for sure about that. But somebody in the press box said, "Tell Coach," so he must not have had the headsets on. "Tell Coach, I think it's 5th down." And the story goes, and it's a true story. I mean, as it's told, it's true to me. And so Coach Stahl turns to the person who said that and says, "Is he sure? Because if Bob calls timeout,
right,
and it's 4th down, and the guy upstairs, he said, 'No, I'm not sure, but I think it is.'" How about that?
Well, and it really does attest to how far the game has advanced in 3 decades in terms of cameras and television and technology. Like, that, it'd be really hard for that to happen today with graphics everywhere and huge screen TVs. And, you know, I mean, back then the scoreboards were light bulbs, you know?
Right. And J.C. Lauterbach was the white hat, and he was a good official, and I got to know him a little bit before.
Yeah, I bet you think he was a good official.
I felt bad. It was obviously that was the last game he did for back then in the Big 8. But crazy to think, Mike, right? I mean, when you really stop and think, you say all the people, including myself, that are supposed to be experts in the game. Bill McCartney on the sidelines, he is a Hall of Fame coach, right? I mean, these officials, I mean, they've got the rubber band. I mean, it's just to think that could happen. Yeah. And again, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know. I think what got us all, not that it's an excuse, maybe an explanation, maybe a poor one, is the timeout, right? And then they didn't turn the down marker.
Right. Yeah.
As much as I could tell, that's what happened. I got home, and first thing Terry said was, "Did you know?" And I said, "No, I think she knew."
Yeah. Well, she's always been the smart one in the relationship. Last one on this. So you go on to win the national championship. So how do you sleep at night? No,
usually I start on my right side, but I watched a lot of TV. I watch TV in bed, but recently I've been setting a timer because
all right, we'll move on. I'll cut you off there. So anyways, you become a head coach. You very quickly turn around Vanderbilt. They were garbage. You started winning 5 games there right away. You become so successful, you go to LSU, had a great run with the Tigers. In 1995, you played in the Independence Bowl. Do you remember the team you played against?
95 would have been at Michigan State, correct?
Michigan State. Do you remember the head coach of Michigan State?
Nick Saban.
Nick Saban. Do you remember who won the game?
We did. LSU won.
So to be clear, you're saying you're a better coach than Nick Saban. Those are your words. You just said that. That's your quote.
No, I would say this, and I think Nick. I would think Nick would agree. On that day, I was. Right? Because you know what, our teams were pretty balanced.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we were in the right bowl game. I'd say just like the games I lost games where I had more talent than the opponent at LSU. That's how you get fired. Okay, one of the ways. And so I would say to you, all those games that I lost, when I had equal talent or less talent, or more talent rather, the other guy was the better coach.
Well, you may not want to comment on this, but in that crazy sort of like what if game that you can play with sports, if this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen, like who knows what Nick Saban is? Who knows if he ever takes LSU if you don't turn it around? I mean, the work you did with that program could have changed the last 25 years of how we've known what the sport to be.
Yeah, we did. They hadn't won for 6 years, and we won right away, no doubt. And the good thing about that job, or one of the good things about that job, and why you can turn it around so quickly, and my mistakes was the harder part of coaching, and that's maintaining. Maintaining is really harder than igniting, especially if you're at a place like LSU. But I always said when I got there, Curly Holman was there before me. He left me Alan Faneca. He left me David LaFleur. Now, we recruited Kevin Falk and Cecil Collins and, some great players. And when I left Nick, probably more than Curly left me. But when Nick left, he probably left the next coach, who I guess was more than I had left Nick. That's one of the great things about coaching at a place that attracts people for one reason or another. You look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is attractive for a lot of different reasons other than football, but it impacts who goes there. LSU is very attractive to local talent, whether they're winning or losing, because a lot of kids grow up wanting to be Tigers, or Tigers, if you want to say it that way. And so, we all benefited from that situation. But I'm proud of what we did early. I'm not so proud about some of the decisions I made as it started to fall apart.
Well, when it does, you end up leaving LSU. Your next coaching stop was the XFL. How does that come into your world?
I had a restaurant at that point in Baton Rouge. It was called DiNardo's, and I was at the restaurant one night, and I get a call from who was going to be the general manager of the Chicago franchise, and I knew his dad, and he says, "You want to be the head coach of the Chicago franchise? I'm going to be the general manager, I think is the term, or I can't remember exactly, vice president, or whatever." I said, "Sure." I didn't know anything about it, and I started studying it, and so kind of agreed to it. And then I was down here where I live now, and I hadn't heard from now the new head of the league, not the guy who called me. The guy from Chicago was trying to recruit me to come to Chicago because we had ties, and I had ties in South Bend, Chicago area. And so I called Mike, who was now the president of the league, and I said, "I haven't heard from you. Am I still going to be the head coach of the Chicago franchise?" He says, "Interesting you asked that question." He says, "Dick Butkus has decided he wants to go into coaching. And he is going to be the head coach of the Chicago franchise." I was going up to look for a home. My brother lived there. I mean, Terry and I were all excited living in Chicago. I thought you would have called me. So he says, "That's the bad news. The good news is," he said, you can go to New York, you can go to Birmingham, and I think Memphis was the third one. And of course, I picked Birmingham. It was a fascinating experience with Vince McMahon. It was a fascinating experience with the suits at NBC and being in meetings with them. The Olympics were that year, and they were talking about the pre-season publicity because of the Olympics, which was one of the reasons they partnered with NBC. Then it fell apart. Then I get a call. I'm walking off the field in Birmingham, and my personnel guy says, "You have to go to LA to meet. Vince wants to meet with all the coaches." I said, that was a Sunday game, but the next game was a Saturday game. So I said, "I'm not going. I can't go." He said, "Coach, I don't think he was asking. I think he said, 'I'll see you in Los Angeles.'" So anyway, we go to Los Angeles. I go to Los Angeles, obviously. And so we're in this conference room, honest to God, Mike. And they say, TV ratings are really down. We're going to change the rules. After the snap of the ball, anybody is eligible to catch a forward pass. And so there was 8 of us, coaches, and we're looking at one another. And a couple of the coaches, I'll never forget this. It was Kippy Brown and Galen Hall, 2 of the coaches, Kippy Brown, Galen Hall, San Francisco and Orlando. And they literally stood up in the meeting and looked at Vince and said, Vince, you told us that this would always be real football when we signed on. You promised us. We knew about the cheerleaders. We knew about no coin flip. We knew about those type of things, but this isn't real football. And Vince turned to, and it was NBC's idea to change the rules. And Vince turned to the NBC execs and said, can't do it. I gave these guys my word, and we're not going to do it.
Really?
And that, I left because there wasn't a lot of flights from LA to Birmingham. So I left the meeting early, and they say that's when the marriage fell apart between Vince and NBC. And I'm sure there was other things that involved. So Vince was a very interesting guy to be around. And we were around him a lot. He was at most of the meetings.
That's wild. I don't even remember that from the 30 for 30 on it. Like,
yeah, that was a wild meeting. I get Kippy Brown and Galen Hall. I mean, they stood up and said, you promised us something like this wouldn't happen. And he said, you're right.
In hindsight, you knew that's where it was ending. But in the moment, did you go, okay?
No, I didn't know it was ending. The league ended during meetings. It'd be like the Big Ten announcing at media days, there's no more Big Ten. We go to WWF at the time, headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, for meetings. And we each meet with the president, and we're going through how can we make things better? How's your staff? Because we were all under one umbrella. So, we were co-workers and competitors. It was not odd, but it was certainly a different setup. And we broke for lunch, and we were supposed to come back later that evening for dinner. And we get, I don't know if there was email. Yeah, there was email at the time. We got an email saying, Vince, we're having a conference call at 5:00. And he announced on that conference call, we're folding. We were on a two-hour dinner break, and it folded. So that's when it ended. I can't remember exactly when that LA meeting was. It might have been the first half of the season. So I didn't think we were folding then, but ratings were down.
Yeah. Do you have any Birmingham Thunderbolts memorabilia left around?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Not a lot, but I have some.
Like what? Like stationery? Like a hat?
I've got footballs. I have equipment. I have an equipment bag. I got media guides. I'm sure I have a football. I think I have a football when we won in New York. I got the game ball, and it's got the panel on it and all that.
That's cool.
Yeah, of course. Hey, Mike, so I live in Florida, right? We used to live in Chicago back and forth. So Terry and I this is like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer. And so we're driving from where we live, and we have to drive through Birmingham to get to Chicago. And we stopped at a fast food place. And I don't know if I had something XFL on or Terry had something XFL on, but the young person who was serving us says, hey, I love that XFL shirt. He said, I went to WrestleMania once, and this is true because the whole team had to go to WrestleMania once to promote the season in Birmingham. And we all went to WrestleMania. He said, and before the matches started, they had tables. I got an autograph from the head coach. I met the head coach. I met some of the players. I didn't have the heart to tell him I was the head coach. Obviously not making a big impression on him when I signed the poster. I was true as it is that you and I are enjoying our company right now.
Oh, that's funny, man.
Yeah,
that's really.
He said I even met the head coach.
You'd like him. Great guy.
2 burgers and large fries, and I'm out of here.
Okay, so XFL comes and goes, and you take the head coaching job at Indiana. Let's move on to cooking. I think that I do actually want to go into the cooking, though. So you mentioned that you owned in Baton Rouge a restaurant called DiNardo's.
Correct. I was Barcelona, yes.
And it was just a coincidence. You bought a restaurant that happened to be named DiNardo's.
No, it was named something else before my partner and I.
I see. And your partner's last name was DiNardo.
No, it was Moran, Irish guy from Chicago, went to University of Wisconsin. He's passed since. TJ Moran. He owned about 13 Ruth Chris's around the country. He was a great restaurateur. I learned a lot about the restaurant business.
But you're a head coach of LSU, and he says, I'd like to open a restaurant with you?
Yeah, he had about 4 restaurants in Baton Rouge, and this one was called the Highland House. It was close to where Terry and I lived, and he was struggling. It was just nondescript food, not country food, but he had 2 or 3 very, very popular restaurants in Baton Rouge. One called TJ Ribs, and his son ran TJ Ribs, and we used to recruit out of TJ Ribs. And his son said to him one day about when we had dinner there with the recruits, how I, I don't know how to say this. I would go around the tables and talk to everybody in the restaurant before I sat with the recruits, and he thought that was unusual and nice and all that. And so TJ was struggling with this restaurant, and he called up the office one day and said, Gerry, let's have lunch. I have a proposition for you. So he called me. We had lunch. He said, what about opening up a restaurant with your family recipes and my experience with steak? And so it was Italian and the steak. A lot of the dishes to this day, it's eggplant Mary, which is named after my mother. Veal Michael is veal marsala. So the restaurant has changed its name since, but the menu is basically the same, and it has some of the same recipes. So that was the venture that we got involved with. I got a lot of criticism for it. There was a big billboard on I-10, DiNardo's restaurant. You lose a game, maybe he would have won it if he wasn't at the restaurant.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And so fair criticism, not that I lost a game because of the restaurant, but
right.
You could see somebody from the outside saying, what's he doing?
But was it really fair? I mean, how many hours a week were you putting in at the restaurant?
I during the season, I'd go to eat dinner after the game, and if it was a night game, I didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. So not often, but still, people say, well, that's not the point. He's still, is he worried about sales? The issue when someone does something like that, and I can understand it, is why. Well, I did it because of the love of food and a chance to learn something. And my plan right along was to ultimately get out of coaching on my terms, which obviously didn't happen. But ultimately, my goal was, when I did get out on my terms, I wanted to go into media and run a restaurant. I mean, that was my plan right along, right up until Indiana, when I opened up D'Angelo's. I wanted Indiana to be my last stop. Remember, a very close friend of mine hired me. I thought we were going to be partners, and they fired him like 4 months after he hired me. And so I lost my base of support. So that was always the plan, restaurant and media. It just didn't work out exactly the way it was. But I can understand people being critical of that. I don't hold that against people.
Well, you still have time to go into media.
I'm trying to break in. If I could just get an interview with someone that people knew, or a podcast. Anyway, go on.
So in Bloomington, was the plan right away you were going to open a restaurant too, or did that sort of happen to come to you?
It came to me because it was a result of learning the community, learning about Bloomington, right? And in Baton Rouge, there was a restaurant called D'Angelo's that a friend of mine owned. That used to be our favorite place before we opened up our own. And so it was casual Italian. It was owned by Louis D'Angelo. We became friends, and he was franchising. And so Terry and I, living in Bloomington, we loved the community, and we there's a very large East Coast presence in Bloomington. There's student body and the people that live there. And so this was an East Coast concept that was in Baton Rouge, because Louis was from Jersey. And so we just thought, this is a perfect fit. In fact, the big dream was, when I got out of coaching, put him in all the Big Ten schools. So I had all these big dreams and these big plans, and Terry really opened it and ran it. So I wasn't really involved at all. She had been an athletic trainer, and she wasn't working at the time, and so on. She was raising our son, basically, because I wasn't around a lot. And so it was really her project. And, the whole thing got turned upside down after I had gotten fired. So that's kind of how that developed.
When you see nowadays on Twitter that you'll put a recipe out there and you'll make it with video and you'll scroll the ingredients down. Like it was one of those things I didn't know until getting to know you a little better, that's a real passion. Like you're genuinely passionate about cooking.
Yeah, I am. It connects our family. Kate and Greg, my daughter and son-in-law, were here just a couple of weeks ago, and they're vegan, and so I'm getting into the vegan stuff and trying to learn how to do that. But it's a chance for all of us, even the grandkids. I make pizza with the grand. I mean, it's just it's such a connection. I think family-wise and culturally. That I really don't want to lose. And I've interviewed, like I have 3 older brothers, and I've interviewed for hours my second oldest because I was the youngest of 4. I don't really remember all that much sitting around the table because they were gone, basically the time of my life that I remember. But he's had 5 kids and he was young with my family. And I love the stories about sitting around the table and you better have a really good reason not to be home for Sunday dinner and all that kind of stuff. So it started with family, but then, I got this from my mother and I don't know how to say it, we were very Italian, but yet my mom loved all kinds of food. And so I'm the same way. I mean, I not only I made jambalaya last night. I mean, my time in the South really influenced my like of food in my cooking. But yeah, I can go on forever. Yeah, I'm passionate about it. I love it. I love to cook.
Well, it's funny that a minute ago you said, your goal after cooking was media and restaurants. And that is obviously what you've done. We've covered the restaurant angle, but the media angle. So how many years were you with ESPN?
2.
And what were your assignments there?
I did some games on radio, and I did a little bit of BTN News Studio, and we had ESPN News Studio. But the biggest thing was the game day radio show, the 7 hours with Revson and McShay. That was obviously the biggest part of what I did with them.
I remember the fall around that time, I was at ESPNU, and on Saturdays you would have Todd, and on Sundays he would fly to Charlotte, and Mike Gottfried and I would do a show every Monday. So he would come in and we would have dinner every Sunday night, and he would have some new insane story about whatever happened with you guys on the road that previous Saturday.
Yeah, we started. We didn't travel at first. I don't think the first year we traveled. The second year, we did. Yeah, we had some fun. I think one of the funniest things that ever happened to us is we were in Columbus for the Ohio State game, and for an Ohio State game. I can't remember who they were playing. It must have been a big game, and because ESPN Game Day was there, along with our radio game day show, and so of course trying to get reservations at a restaurant was almost impossible. So I said, let me give it a shot. So I call up and I call this one restaurant and I said, oh no, we're booked. I said, have you ever heard of ESPN Game Day? And they said, of course. Well, Chris Fowler. Oh yeah. Well, we're on ESPN. We're part of ESPN Game Day. I didn't say Game Day Radio. Mm-hmm. So I think they were expecting Fowler and the Beatles to show up. We used to call ourselves the Monkees. So they gave us a reservation. Revson and McShay couldn't believe I got this done. But the funniest thing is we stayed so long after dinner, just talking. There were some other people around. They finally came and said to us, we know this isn't general procedure, but would you guys mind leaving? It was hysterical. So we got a fake reservation and we stayed too long. But we had a lot of fun.
Do you know Todd is the reason you and I first met?
How's that?
I remember exactly where we first met. It was a brief encounter, but it was in Pasadena at the USC Texas Rose Bowl.
Okay.
And he went over, he was like, have you met? And I was like, I think I know of him and everything. And we came over and I shook your hand and you spit in my eye. And I thought it was so rude, just from right off the bat, for you to insert dominance over me. I just thought it was really disrespectful.
I had forgotten that we'd met until you said I spit in the eye. I do remember that. Why? People, someone's going to believe this. Would you stop it, please?
Someone hopefully will, and then I'll I'll finally get revenge. So you go to BTN. You, Dave, me, Howard, Rick, Sean Morris. I think that might be it for all the people who were there from day one. What do you most remember about the early days of BTN, that first year or so?
Lack of confidence, trying to feel my way. I could remember after one show, I asked what a rundown was. And Mark Silverman and Rever and Howard, they brought me over to a computer. I mean, I didn't know. I didn't know anything. I don't know. I was just nervous and
when you feel you got to a point where you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
I don't know. I don't know when they're, I guess a funny thing would be to say I still don't know, but I do know. But I'm not sure when. I still get nervous. I hate it, but I try to watch everything I do, and I just I know the mistakes that's coming up. It's a little bit like coaching, right? I mean, when I was at Vanderbilt, if I had called a better play on 3rd and 4 on the right hash, coming out, we're on our own 39-yard line. I called 39 block H, which was the opposite. The Missouri game was 38 block H on that last down, but 39 block H. And it was a bad call. Otherwise, we'd beat Tennessee. And I mean, I think it was our first year. It would have been an extraordinary win. So watching that tape, watching that play, saying if I called a better play, we'd have beaten Tennessee, because they wouldn't have I should explain it more. If we get a first down, they can't stop the clock and it's over.
Right. So
I'm not overstating it, saying we would have won the game. So when we do shows and all that, and I watch it and all that, but I don't really enjoy it all that much when I know there's a mistake coming. I don't have on this. What are you doing to me? You're ruining my day.
You're good. You're fine. You're doing okay on air, Gerry. You don't need to be upset about it. I think it's great you still watch. My first handful of years, like maybe 6 or 7 years, I would watch every show, and sometimes I would even take notes. And then it got to, I think honestly, it just got to a point where it was just too many shows that I started to feel like, okay, I think I'm probably okay. And now I'll kind of only watch if I remember there was a great moment, or if there was something I think I can learn from it to do better. But I think that's great. You still watch the show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way to say I watch every single thing, but I watch the great majority. I mean, I did something last night, and I watched it because I was in the same thing. I noticed that there's nothing behind me in the wall, and so I mean,
yeah,
it's nerve-wracking though. It really is.
Yeah, it's a different skill set. It's a different muscle group than anything you've done before as a coach or player or anything. But I want to go back to the early days. I've never told you this. I'm curious if there's any truth to it. I felt like you and me, like you were waiting to see if I could earn your respect. Like I felt like that first year or so, you were sort of like, I don't know who this cat is. And then after like a year and a half, you're like, got it. Okay, we're squared away. Does that ring true at all?
No.
Okay.
The only part of that story that rings true is, okay, I got it. I never remember. I'm being serious. I never remember I got it.
That's funny. Because I remember some early shows where I would
I feel bad. I mean, you're making me feel like
no,
because I have a lot of nerve saying, oh, let me check this guy out. I mean, who the hell am I? So
it could be a dynamic of a respected coach and a 25-year-old that I just sort of projected something. But I felt like the first year I was sort of like, I might throw a joke out and not get a laugh. It might not have been funny. Whereas now I feel like I can read you really well and throw something and know it's going to get.
I just always remember us being best friends. I don't remember anything else.
We have been best friends.
I know. I thought we were. Now it's a little damaged.
I don't think we were best friends until year 2.
Oh, no, I think we were. No, we're not now. I mean, what the hell? I mean,
expiration date has come and gone because of this podcast. I hear you. Tell someone what it's like to do an 8-hour signing day show.
It's a challenge, for sure. It starts out for me, I don't know about you, like, is this ever going to end? But then, Mike, then there's a point where you kind of lose interest in keeping track,
Right.
and it kind of speeds along. I'll say this, Mike: the second show that we do, and we bring the players in and the families, I mean, that is a home run. That is such a kick. I could do that all the time. Yeah,
it's because of the kids, right? I mean, you
yeah,
can your face
and the families,
young
and
people.
the family. Oh, you know, what do you miss about coaching? I miss being in the staff room trying to figure out third and short and trying to figure out what to do with one of our guys that's had a problem, and on and on and on. Just that, a lot of smart people solving a lot of big problems and being on campus. I miss being on campus. And for one day a year now, you and I were kind of on campus.
Right.
But that show is a home run. And so is the other one. And I got to tell you, Alan, you'd think that we would work with Alan every day.
I know.
And I think that's part of why that show works. He is great. I mean, he comes in, he fits in. It's the four of us, and he gives as much as he takes, the little nudging and
right.
all this stuff. So,
right. To think, in all seriousness, Alan True, Jerry's talking about, the recruiting analyst at 24/7, who's done those, I think, since 2012. It's been the four of us. Like, the fact that you, Howard, and I have worked together for 14 years, and then we have the jokes about being best friends and besties, and then he slides right in, and he totally gets it. Like, it's a really cool luck of the draw to have that kind of chemistry.
Yeah, you know, you could be better prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, but other than that, you know, it's
all right.
I love both of them, but I got to tell you, I like when the guys come in with their families. To me, that's just fabulous.
Give me the BTN either show or moment that makes you smile the most. Doesn't have to be with me. I'm not digging here, but something from whether it's when something went wrong or a signing day moment with a kid. Like, to me, when I think of great moments with you, you asked a to-be Michigan offensive lineman if he's nervous and if he's wearing makeup, and he had no idea where to go, and he was totally lost. It was great. Like, is there anything from since 2007 that you're like, you know what, I'm really happy with was this moment?
You're talking about all the shows, right?
Anything at all.
Well, it's not a funny thing. It's a couple things. Studio, when I got to share that I supported Kaepernick kneeling for the national anthem and disagreeing with Dabo Swinney, and we talked about Ara Parsegian earlier in the show. And when I had an opportunity to say, if I was still in coaching and one of my guys wanted to protest, I'd say same thing as my coach told me: no violence, no damage. And by the way, don't come to the next meeting without a voter registration card. So to me, that's important. I can remember being at Nebraska in tailgate, and it was the same issue. And Commissioner Delaney was on the desk with us, and he shared that Dean Smith was much like that. He was at North Carolina when integration first started, and Dean Smith allowed them to express themselves, and he and I shared that Ara let me do it and Dean let him do it. So those are few and far between, and I know they're hard to do. I mean, we've had a lot of fun, and we yuck things up a lot. But to me, any chance that I can share things like that without being offensive, maybe disagreeing with somebody, and without putting the network in jeopardy or anyone else that I work with in jeopardy. Those are the things that especially the Kaepernick thing.
I've always thought you earn the right to goof off and to be silly when you've proven you can do the serious stuff. That when you show that you can handle the important things, then everything else we realize isn't important, and that allows you the freedom and the air to sort of have fun and goof off, because you know when it's time to be an adult and be a grown up and have the serious talks, you know.
Yeah, the Joe Paterno thing was tough too. That was, I've known Joe a long, long time, and that, that was a challenge, and that was a struggle. So, it's interesting. I can't remember who else we played other than our conference games the year that Tennessee third and medium situation came up. So in coaching, you tend to think of the games you lost. You don't think all that much about the games you won. And it might be the same thing in our business now. You think of those moments, not that you lose, but that were a little bit tougher to do, right? And when you get into some of those issues, it's tough, especially because we are a network that's connected to a conference, and I do think I think we have to be respectful of certain things. We can't just say what we want to say every day. I think we have to pick our times, and we have to make sure it's done the right way.
Well, I could keep talking to you for an hour, but your wife, Terry, keeps texting me that I got to let you go. So
no, she keeps texting. Mike, keep him there.
All right,
whatever you're doing, keep him busy.
We end the podcast with before you go. These are 4 questions unrelated to anything for you. All right, here we go. You love watching TV. Give me the list, top of your head, all-time Gerry DiNardo favorite TV shows.
Well, that's not fair. They're going to be all recent. Miss Maisel, Peaky Blinders, Billions. I hate these questions because I always leave something out.
Did you like Breaking Bad or Mad Men?
Yeah, I like both of them, but not as much as other people, I think, really enjoyed it. But I did watch both of them.
You like a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills?
No.
Yeah, that's a big thing for you.
Never watched it.
You're a Bachelorette fan, I know.
No. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Right now, Peaky Blinders. Although I'm waiting for the next one. Maisel's supposed to come back. I like You.
Me?
No, not you. You. The show. Anyway, you've seen my list. You're killing me here.
Yeah.
Number 2. Are we done?
No. Number 2. It's called Before You Go. Number 2. How did you propose to your wife, Terry?
Okay. Can I tell?
Do a good start.
Can I tell how we got married instead?
Okay.
That's much more interesting.
Okay.
All right. So I'm coaching in Colorado. She's a trainer in Colorado. We're in double sessions. We're both very busy. We got married in between practices.
You guys are insane.
And it was past the van. Terry and we had no witnesses, so I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, that we're totally married. Pastor Van said, "Do you have any witnesses?" And I said, "Well, there's a couple of guys in the parking lot, but we're on a tight schedule." That's a true story, Mike. So I don't remember the proposal. So when you air this, please let me know. So Terry is nowhere near it.
It's shocking that a man who got married in between practice sessions doesn't remember the romance of how he proposed to
Well, I don't know. We may have decided then. Things were hectic, Mike.
I know. She's a lucky woman. Okay, number 3. What would you say has been your favorite age in life?
Oh boy, man, that is a great question, Mike.
Thanks.
There's no good answer for that.
Yeah.
As they say down south, that's akin to this. Are you still beating your dog? If you say yes, you're a dog beater. If you say no, you've admitted to being a dog beater.
No.
Yes.
I don't think anyone would grudge you if you said college was my favorite time of my life, or if you said when I was a young father that was my favorite time, or if you say I've never had more fun right now.
Here's my problem. I don't know about you, but when I was in college and someone came talk to the team or talk to the class and they said, "These are the best years of your life," I sat there and I said, "I'm 21. I'm probably going to live to be 85, and the best is over." That's why I can't answer the question. I should say my age right now, 50. Okay, but because that's what I'm living in.
Right. By the way, just for everyone at home, Gerry not answering a question is a great glimpse into what it's like working with Mr. DiNardo.
Yeah.
Number 4. Besides me, can't use me. Who's your hero?
So did you make these up yourself? Did Ross help you? I mean,
Producer Ross helps. Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Never had one?
No, I have a lot.
You don't
I
want
have
to
a lot.
say one out?
I don't have. I don't.
What about as a kid? Like even if it was like Mickey Mantle or something.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I love Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
I don't know in those terms that I would think he was a hero back when I was that age.
Right.
I could, Bobby Richardson, Tony Kuba. I mean, I was a Yankee fan.
Sure.
I mean, we used to look forward to playing the White Sox. I mean, it was like a W,
That hurts. That hurts.
No, I don't know. I don't like the last two questions. I got to be honest with you. I've always been honest with you, and I've learned that you didn't like me when we first started working together in this podcast. So you've been honest with me. I didn't like either one of those last two questions. What was the third question? I forgot.
Your favorite age in life?
Yeah, that's a dumb question. And this one,
you don't remember it from 8 seconds ago? It was who was your hero?
Yeah, those are two dumb questions. You need to do better than that. Are you planning on having any other podcasts?
Well, here's the thing.
Are you going to end the show at 4 questions?
Yes.
May
I continue?
Yes, go on, sir.
Because it's you, and it's called Before You Go with 4 questions, I have a 5th. No, I don't really. That's just a rip because you.
Mike, if Missouri would have had the cameras and they're at broadcasting school, right?
Yes.
I mean, they should have been ahead of the curve. That last down that you spent so much time worrying if we scored or not, that happened a lot back then. That down happened a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Gerry DiNardo, which, as we learned, you want me to call you from now on. Thank you for being my best of my best friends.
You end the show the same way every week?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Good being with you, Mike.
So, to recap, he was an actual friend with the Rudy. He got married in between football sessions without a witness, meaning, Terry, you can probably get out still. And if you run into him on the street, ask him for some XFL memorabilia. He's got some lying around. My thanks to my bestie, Gerry DiNardo, for joining me. Heads up that our pal Alex Brew recently had John Beeline on his Take 10 podcast. Be sure to check that out. But that'll do it for this episode. From the Big Ten Network in Chicago, I'm Mike Hall. We'll see you next week.